Hi, Kristen.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm tired.
You're tired.
Yeah,
Why are you tired?
female things won't let me sleep.
Do what?
Female things won't let me sleep.
Oh,
Well, get good sleep.
huh?
I said get good sleep at least.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Well, part of being a female.
Yeah. So let's dive in. So you want to be a teacher, or you've already been a special ed teacher, right?
Correct. I was a special ed teaching assistant last year.
So tell me about that. What did that include?
I basically went from classroom to classroom and helped the teacher and then helped the students specifically that needed accommodations and modifications within the classroom.
So so do you think you have to have a special uh how do I say this? A special calling to take care of special needs kids?
I think if you're working in special ed specifically, I do believe that you do just because there is a lot more work. Just because you gotta, every kid is different and their accommodations and modifications are different as well. Within the regular classroom, I mean, obviously we do accommodations and modifications and we do have our special ed kids in there, but I think just working specifically just with special ed, sometimes it can make the day a little bit longer because it's a little bit more difficult. But I think I think every teacher needs to have that passion just for their students in general, whether they are special ed or gen ed or GT kids. And because we have a mix of all of them within every classroom.
So what made you want to be a teacher in the first place?
It's just something that I've always really loved and always wanted to do growing up. I've always loved helping people and helping kids younger than me as well. Just find things, find ways to do certain things, whether that be school related or just in life. And for me, I love helping students reach their dream because sometimes they don't have parents or a support system at home that tells them it's okay. You can reach for anything. You don't have to do what I do. You don't have to do what I tell you to do with your future. Just reach and go for your dreams and just strive. And so I want to be that as a teacher, just that constant reminder to my students that no matter what life throws at you, you can go and do whatever you set your mind to.
So tell me one way. Let's say you were let's say you were a fifth grade teacher and these kids are going on to middle school. What's one way that you would inspire that in your classroom? Like, would you do it? Like, tell me the ways you would inspire, because I'm big on dreams and
Right.
I'm big on helping people think about their dreams, and because people forget to dream. So, what would you tell your fifth grade class? How would you get them to dream big about their future?
I would start it off at the beginning of the year with letting my students have a say in what goes on in our classroom, because I do believe that our students dictate what they learn, whereas we dictate the material, but they dictate how they learn and to what extent they can learn it as well. So I would definitely want my students to get involved within the classroom and not think that this is my classroom, I'm creating the rules, whatever I say go, which is true to an extent. But I want my students to, like with the classroom management rules, okay, well, let's think of them together. Let's create something together so that they can take ownership of it. And then throughout the year, start giving them bigger roles within the classroom. Let them create, like I give them the topic and they get to think of how they want to present the topic to me, whether that be an essay or whether that be a project that they come up with on their own on the computer, or creating a poster board, doing a little acting play. I want my students to be able to start taking charge of more and more throughout the year, so that whenever they do get to junior high, they aren't just relying on everybody else, and they aren't just a sponge. They're actually taking charge of their education, and they see the importance of education and learning, and just making sure that, oh, well, it's not, I just have to go to school. It's not something that I have a choice of. It's something that they end up wanting to do. They want to learn more, and they want to keep striving, and they want to start doing that within their own life as well.
Right. So, yeah, I think that you help instill self-motivation and you inspire kids, you can change their lives. And so that's something that, like, I would imagine that all principals are looking for teachers that want to inspire children and motivate them to put down their games and think creatively outside the box. So that's awesome. So what would you do with a child who was constantly disruptive?
One of the things that I've actually kind of learned this past year working with 7th and 8th grade as a C's TA, just sometimes those students that are disruptive, they need to do something. And so I would try and find ways to let those students that are disruptive, or my students that I know that have ADHD, they're going to be the ones that I'm going to be calling upon to help me pass out things or help pick up papers throughout the day. So that way it kind of gets them up from their desk. They kind of get a little bit of that energy out. And so whenever they get back to their desk, they can be a little bit more focused as well.
So let me ask you this too. How would you bridge the gap? Let's say you had a highly intelligent child, but not quite too talented and gifted. And then you had children that were still learning basic things. Like, how do you bridge that gap in a classroom when you have so much diversity on levels of intelligence at that stage? How would you bridge that gap?
Well, I would start with trying to find kind of the middle ground between the two, which can be hard if there is such a giant gap. But I would find kind of the middle ground. So something that is a little bit challenging for the lower end, and then find ways to take that middle gap and break it down a little bit for those that do struggle. But also on the other side, with the students that are more of the higher intelligence, closer to GT, I would find, with that middle gap, find additional things that they can do. So whether that be, let's say we're doing something on George Washington. Let's say they get the opportunity to maybe do a little bit more research on their own, or find something that George Washington did outside of what we're learning. So something that ties into it, but it's something additional that they can do.
Awesome. Do you believe in or would you incorporate collaborative and project-based learning and teamwork? Is that something that you believe in?
Yes, it is. I believe, like I said, I was the one that kind of liked to help those that were younger than me or didn't know exactly how to kind of get there. So I would definitely involve collaborative learning. I believe that sometimes as a teacher, I can say things a certain way and maybe my students don't understand it, but if their classmate can explain it a different way or explain it in the way that they understand it, sometimes that helps them come to the realization of what they're learning. And I do believe that that's a big thing that doesn't get used a whole lot, because it can kind of create this mass chaos if it's not done properly. But I do believe that students have a different way of explaining things than teachers. And sometimes that is very beneficial to fellow classmates.
So, so talk to me about technology. Like I have a 14-year-old grandson, and honestly, I feel like that technology, it's easy to get, and he's talented and gifted. That the technology, like sometimes I see his emails and there's just email after email after email after email. You know, if you've got 6 different teachers and they're sending 3 emails out a day, that's 18 emails. You know, it's just kind of overwhelming. So how would you help kids manage the technology learning aspect that we have now? I mean, I think it's kind of insane, but that's my personal opinion. But how would you handle that if a kid came to you and said, you know, Miss Terrell, I can't look. I have 30 emails, and literally my grandson will have 30 emails a day. How do, as an adult working, that's a lot of emails for me.
Right.
So if you had the opportunity, what would you do to drop that down to a manageable level?
One thing that I would do is sometimes I think a lot of the emails that we can get are either repetitive or they can be combined. So as a teacher, I would make sure that whenever I do send out an email or post something on my class Facebook page or class website, I would make sure that I get all of the information that I can in that one email. And I would even take that to just talking to some of the other fellow teachers around me and be like, look, our kids are getting a ton of emails. What's something that we can do to limit that? Whether that be doing a Facebook post, saying things in the classroom, or just like I said, combining those emails so that our kids don't feel overwhelmed. Because I do believe that a lot of that, some of them, it doesn't faze them, but especially with those special ed kids or the 504 kids, it can really overwhelm and overstimulate their brain. And then they get anxiety, sometimes they can get depressed and way overstressed with the amount of information that's coming in at once. But if we can concise that or consolidate that and make it a little bit more concise, or even find another way of getting that information to our students, whether that be a physical copy of something or just posting it on a class page for everyone, and get them into the habit of looking at that page every day, I think that would make a huge difference.
So, what's your opinion on going back to school? What do you think should happen?
Personally, with all of this stuff, I understand like we do need to be cautious and we need to be careful and considerate of others. But from kind of more of like the medical standpoint, and think about it when you have a child who is a baby and who is getting to the age where they can go to daycare or go to preschool, and we want our children to get in that so that they can learn the social skills, but also in that they're building up their immune system. And so I think if we're just constantly staying in our house, in our little bubble, we constantly have something over our face, we're slowly breaking down our immune system. And so will there be a spike of sickness cases, whether that be the coronavirus or the flu? Yes, there will. It's because we've been in a bubble. We're not used to being in front of people. And that's one thing that I've made sure I'm doing is I am following the rules. I'm trying to stay 6 feet away from people. I wear my mask out in public, whether I want to or not. I do it because it's something that we're told that we have to do. But I think I truly believe that we do need to get our kids back in school because, one, they need to learn. we've been doing online stuff, and some teachers have had great success with it and other teachers have had zero. No kids have done anything. So we do need to get our kids back in school. Well, some of them probably get sick or family get sick. Yes, but we've got to build that immune system back up so that we can build up barriers against other sicknesses. And whether, as I know I think it was yesterday, they were talking about how they were just going to keep the kids in the classrooms and the teachers move from classroom to classroom. I think maybe it looks like that, but I think if we just went back to school like normal and we just made it a point to sanitize everything at the end of the day. Yes, it's one more thing that us teachers have to do, but if that sanitization and stuff can get our kids back in school and get them back learning and get them building that immune system back up, I think it will make a huge difference.
I agree. So, I think one of the hardest things about being a teacher, I taught dance forever. One of the hardest things about being a teacher is the parents. So, how would you deal with one, non-engaged parents, which is to me child abuse? That's unengaged. And especially with this distance learning, I think tons of kids are falling off the map because of that. And two, how would you deal with over involved parents?
With the unengaged parents, I think that's always harder just because they may be getting the emails and maybe they'll respond to you, but it's getting them involved in their life, in their school life. And I think, especially if I'm at a Title I school, a lot of that could be the parents don't know how to help. And so they just kind of stand back because they don't want to be a hindrance. Where in reality, we need our parents to jump in and let it be an opportunity to learn with your student. Get on their same level and go, look, mommy and daddy don't know this either, but you know what? We're going to come alongside you and we're going to do it with you. We're going to learn too. And if that's the material, I think doing something maybe once a month where it's a family night and you get to get the parents and the students involved together in the classroom, and the parents and students, we can kind of create like a competition, like maybe a family game night or a family picnic, something that we can do either as a school or just as a classroom, I think would help the parents realize and see what their kids are doing and how great of a addition it can make to even their lives. And if it's technology based, then us teachers, that's kind of a slip up on us. Like, we need to teach our parents, like, look, this is what your students are learning. If you don't know this, I'm going to do a little class, whether that be we do a Zoom like this, or we just record ourselves in the classroom and post it on our page, like our class page. That way our parents can have access to that and they can learn without feeling ashamed of being around other parents that may know this stuff or may not. But on the flip side of it, I think, with an overengaged parent, I think that that's awesome. I think that they want to be in their kid's life, and I feel like that connection between the parent and the student is a very strong one, and I think that that will benefit them in their life, where it can be a little overwhelming for me. But I grew up, I had parents that were always engaged in my education. They wanted to be there. They wanted to be a part of my classrooms, whether that be field trips, whether that be field day, anything. But I think if a parent is over engaged, I would have maybe a meeting with them and ask them maybe why they, not trying to step on toes, but why do you feel the need that you need to email me 50 times a day? Right. And just reassure them that I'm going to post everything on our class page, or I will send out an email once a week saying, hey, this is what we're learning in class. This is what we're going to be doing next week. And make sure that my parents are involved, but make sure that they know that I'm not just teaching their kid. That'd be great if I could do one-on-one. That'd be fine. It wouldn't be a big deal. But I do want to teach your kid, and I do want your kid to have a great education. But I also want that for all the rest of 15, 16, however many students I have in my classroom. So where it may not seem that I'm responding to every single email, I'm going to answer as many questions as I can for you, because I do want you to know that I am doing my best to teach your students, and I do want the best for for my students as well. But at the same time, I can't just, because it's not that one-on-one time, I can't just spend my entire day looking at it.
Right.
All.
Yeah, that's the situation where you want a t-shirt that says you are not the only one. So I want to ask you this. So I see on your resume that you went to a private school, a Christian-based school, which is awesome. And I don't think you have children. I think you're pretty young. Yeah. So if you had children today and you had the option, would you send them to a private school or a public school, and why?
I think I would think that I would want to send them to a private school, just because I know that there are smaller classes and they do get that biblical education that I would want to instill in my child. But I think it would just really depend on where we are financially, because I know that is a huge deal. My dad always joked that he could buy me a brand new Mustang for every year of education, which is true.
Right.
And it is a financial burden. So if I was financially able to, I would love to send my student to a private school. And I know being in a private school, I always kind of joked it's basically a public school with Bible education, which can be true. But I feel like in a public school, maybe not so much in elementary, but definitely once they start getting towards junior high and high school, there's all those things that start coming in, the drugs, the sex, the alcohol. And in a public school, it is definitely more prevalent. It's more kind of out there. Whereas in a private school, it's more hidden, and students are aware of that and they hide it better. And so I know some of the people that I went to high school with actually got kicked out because they were selling drugs out of their locker, or they were having sex in the bathroom, or just all of these different things. So, I mean, they do happen in both places, but I think the biblical aspect of a Christian school, I think is fantastic. I would love for my students to have, my child to have that.
Awesome. So your faith is basically first, which is good. So I see you went to Tarrant County Junior College and then on to Mary Hardin Baylor. Why did you not go straight to Mary Hardin?
Well, my senior year, long story short, I found out I have ADHD. And so I think getting that at a later age also helps me as a teacher, because I had to, since I was a senior, I was going from class to class, and so I didn't really have as much of a connection with my teachers as, say, an elementary student would, and didn't have as much guidance in that. So I kind of had to create my own ways and figure out what works best for me learning-wise. And so I believe I can take that as a teacher and be able to make better accommodations and modifications for my students that do have different disabilities. But so my senior year, found out I had ADHD, and so my GPA kind of dropped, and I took the test to see if I could get into dual credit English or math. Not a math person, but this girl decided to go and do dual credit college algebra. Bad idea. So I did the first semester of college algebra and I failed it. And so the second semester, instead of trying to just drudge my way through college algebra or dual credit, I went and transferred back into pre-cal. So I hadn't taken pre-cal before, and so I skipped pre-cal and went straight to college algebra. That was also a bad idea. But we live and learn. So that second semester, I was in pre-cal, but I was doing the second semester of pre-cal, which was a little easier because I learned things. I'm learning the basis of what I did in dual credit. So it was a little bit easier for me. But as I was doing second semester pre-cal, I was doing first semester pre-cal on top of it on my own. And I did not finish it in time. And so my GPA had dropped, and then I hadn't gotten that credit. And so I had to do it I had to finish it over the summer. And so by the time I finished it, I wasn't able to get into UMHB, and also kind of wanted to save a little bit of money. And so I did TCC and tried to get as much credit underneath my belt before I transferred. And so I transferred. I was at TCC from the fall of 2012 till I finished in the fall of 2014. So I was there for about 2.5 years. And then I transferred to UMHB in January of 15.
Awesome. So who was your favorite teacher in your life and why?
I think I have 3 favorite teachers. One of them was my 5th grade teacher. And the first memory I have of her was one that I didn't even meet her, didn't even know her yet, is her and her husband have a house, like a summer house in Maine. And so they go up there every summer just to kind of get away. She's a teacher. And so before the school year started, before we even had Meet the Teacher, I got a postcard, and it said "Kisses from Maine." And so it had a Maine lighthouse on it. And it was just a little personal note that she had written to me, and excited about meeting me and starting the school year and getting to learn. And she definitely made learning fun. I loved her class. Like, we would do spelling with shaving cream. We would do competitions. It was a lot of fun. She always made learning fun. But she also knew that as 5th grade, we needed kind of a little bit of a break. And so we did have recess, but she had something that was called quiet time. And so we would have 15-20 minutes of quiet time every day after recess. And so it was a time that we could read books, we could play a game with our friends that was quiet, or we could just take that time and just kind of work on homework. And so it kind of definitely took a little bit of the stress of the day off. And then my second favorite teacher is I have 4. 2 of them are related. One of them was my 7th grade teacher. She taught Texas history, and she just kind of made it fun whenever we were learning, it wasn't Texas history, it was world history. And so as we were learning about the Holocaust, she did it every year, and she got all of the teachers involved in 7th grade, whether they were English, math, history, science, whatever, she got them all involved. And so as we were learning about the Nazis and Corrie ten Boom, we would read Corrie ten Boom's book, and we actually got to create our own hiding place. So we built a hiding place, and every week we would take turns being the Jews and having to hide. And so we would all kind of have a role. And so the school even got involved and would play it over the PA system. And so whenever we heard that were the Jews, they had to hide like they did in that time.
Wow.
And the administrations were the Nazis. And so they had to come and try and find us. It was really fun, and it made learning entertaining. And I think if you can make learning fun, then you've got your students, and they're going to learn a lot more than if you're just sitting there, okay, well, this is what we're going to do next, and just kind of do it more lecture style. Then my choir teacher was another one of my favorites, just because, one, I loved choir, but also she was the teacher that I could go to in high school and junior high just whenever I had a long day. Like, if I just didn't want to sit in the lunchroom, she would let me come and eat in her classroom, or she would pray over me if I was having issues or struggling with something. even though she was a choir teacher, she would try and help me with my homework if I needed help, or just I knew I could always go to Miss Martin's room just for kind of a little getaway.
Right.
And then in college, my favorite teacher her name is Dr. Sykes. And because of my ADHD, I didn't think that I really needed help. When I transferred from a community college to a university, I thought I could do it on my own. So I didn't get any help. I didn't have medication, and I didn't do tutoring, which was a very bad idea. And now I'm on the other side of it, and I know that it's okay to ask for help. And I do want my students to know that just because you think you can do it doesn't mean that you can't ask for help. You will not know everything. So it is okay to ask for help, and it's not a sign of weakness. And Dr. Sykes was always one that just kind of stood by me the entire time. And actually, on graduation day, she found me. And she whispered in my ear, she said, "I knew you could do it." And so she's an education professor. I don't know why I'm crying.
Awesome. That's awesome.
That doesn't help. But she was always one that no matter what, she just reminded me of my dream. And I think that's as a student, they need to hear that from us.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times they view their teachers just as an instructor, not as a person.
Right.
And we need to show our students that we are people, and we do want the best for them, and we do want them to succeed. And just having that as a reminder, that's what we need to be. Right. And I think that's why all of those are my favorite teachers, because they constantly reminded me of that, no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, don't know why I'm crying.
It's awesome. Like, and that's the thing, like, if I were to hire a teacher, I would want a teacher that was passionate about believing in children and showing them that because a lot of kids don't have someone that believes in them. And, I was fortunate that I had people that believed in me too. Okay, so I just have one more question. I'm huge on personal growth. And I'm 61 and I am not done learning. So like right now I'm in a book club. We're reading Get Out of Your Head or something.
I want to read that book so bad. I haven't gotten it yet.
So tell me, first, do you believe in personal growth, continuing personal growth, and what are some of the things you do for your own personal growth?
I do. I really do believe in personal growth. I believe that if we don't believe in it, then we're stagnant. Then we don't want to do anything. And we become okay living in the monotony of life. And personally, I always want to strive to do better. I always want to do things for myself that's going to help myself both now and in the future. Like, if I were to just be okay with where I am now, I would be living with my parents. I wouldn't be making enough money to support myself, and I would be okay with it. And I don't think that that's okay. I think I need to strive for a job that, one, is going to help me financially be able to support myself. Two, is going to help me be able to get on my own and get kind of out from underneath my parents. But three, I need to find a job that I'm going to love, that I'm not going to want to leave whenever times get hard. I'm going to want to stick with it and just keep pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward. And in pushing forward, especially in education, things are constantly changing. I was talking with a lady the other day, and she homeschooled her kids, and we were talking about going back to school, and she was kind of saying that we could group like 3 or 4 grade levels together. And I'm like, no, you can't. And she was like, well, we used to do it all the time back then. I'm like, I understand that. But even since I've graduated college or graduated high school, education has drastically changed. And I think especially with education and then medical fields and even business, specifically those professions, they're constantly changing and morphing and moving and learning and growing. And I think if we don't do that as a person, then we become unhappy in life. And so with education, I want to learn alongside with education. I want to do professional development, whether how boring it may be or exciting it may be. I want to be a part of blogs that teachers do, and I already am. I've got several blogs that teachers do saved on my computer. I follow teachers on Pinterest and Instagram, and so I want to constantly be adding into my knowledge and adding into me as a person. And so taking that within work and then within my personal life, I want to make sure that I'm not staying stagnant, because whenever I realize that I'm unhappy, it's because I've been okay with being stagnant. And I don't want that for myself or for my students or for my family, my loved ones, my boyfriend. I don't want that. We should constantly strive to keep going and adding and adding. And I want my students to make sure that they know that that's what Miss Terrell wants. She doesn't want us to just be here. Here's the bar, and here's where we're gonna go. We're gonna exceed expectations, and they're not gonna do it alone. I'm gonna do it too.
That's awesome, and I think that that's so important that you because they're watching you. They're watching everything you do. So I lied. I have one more question. So let's just hypothetically say that that teaching doesn't work out, that it just doesn't work. What will you do?
That's a great question. I've always kind of loved event planning. Like, that's just always something I love doing. So maybe I would do that. But I was watching a show the other day. It's called Songland. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But basically, it's these three producers that are the three kind of biggest producers right now in music. And then they invite an artist. So Usher, Sugarland, and all these different types of artists. And it's not one specific artist. It's artists from all different genres. And they have songwriters come in, and they have 4 songwriters, and those 4 songwriters present their song to this artist for that artist to choose. And so then the artist narrows it down to 3, and those 3 get to work with the 3 producers, and they kind of morph the song and change it to fit more of the artist. And there was a girl that was on the show the other day, and they asked her, because she had moved away from her family to Tennessee so she could be in the production industry. And they asked her, they were like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if this doesn't work out? And she goes, I don't know. I don't have a plan B. And so sometimes I think having plan Bs kind of can be a cripple. I know plan for the future, but I think if we get in that mindset of, oh, well, if this doesn't work out, then I can always do this, then we don't want it bad enough, and we don't go for it hard enough, and we don't do whatever it is in our willpower to get there. So I really don't know. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I never really thought of doing anything else. Like, I've never really thought of, well, what if I'm not a teacher? What would I do? I don't know. I really don't have a plan B. It's just something that I've always wanted to do, and I do want it bad. And so if it's not this year, then it's next year or the next year. I'm going to try my hardest to get to my dream, because teaching is a dream. Like, I love it. It's fun. It's hard and it's exhausting, but it's very rewarding. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, and I loved getting to know you and hearing a little bit about your story and your philosophies. And I think you will make an awesome teacher, and any school would be blessed to have you. So I appreciate you doing this with me, and
Appreciate you doing this.
I'll give you some feedback, and I just wish you the best of luck. Okay.
I'm gonna open this for feedback.
Well, let me. I'm going to send it to you.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. Will that work?
Yes, now I can apply to the 30 districts that Suzanne sent me yesterday.
That's what it takes. You got
She
to
was texting me all the yesterday. Like, try this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one.
all of them. Yeah. Okay. Well, best of luck, and you'll be hearing from me soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.